노스캐롤라이나 롤리더램의 리서치 트라이앵글 파크는 각광받는 기술단지로 성장하면서 새로운 전환기를 맞이하고 있습니다. CEO 익스체인지는 이곳 듀크대 퓨크와 경영대학원생들을 초대했습니다. 그리고 기업 재창조의 두 대가의 말씀을 들어보죠. 먼저 최악의 컨티넨탈 항공을 최고의 자리에 올려놓은 CEO 고든 베튠.
Get there to your destination on time with your underwear. It's not real complex.
그리고 최근 합병으로 인해 260억 달러의 거대 기업으로 변신한 한유의 회장이자 CEO이신 마이클 본시니오르.
Like all big complex mergers like this, we're in the middle of a lot of moving parts right now.
웅장한 미래를 향해 가고 있는 두 분의 CEO를 만나보시죠.
Exclusive national funding for this program is provided by A.T. Kearney, a global management consulting firm helping businesses achieve results with capabilities in strategy, operations, and technology. A.T. Kearney, right there with you.
이제 사회자이자 CNN의 상임 분석가인 제프 그린필드를 만나보시죠.
Thank you. Welcome to CEO Exchange. Now, imagine something. Imagine you have just been named CEO of a major company. Sounds great. Now imagine that your very first task is to convince your managers, your workers, your customers, and your shareholders that there will actually be a healthy company for you to run in the months ahead. What do you say to them? What do you do? What happens when reinventing the company is not some buzzword cliche, but a matter of sheer corporate survival? That's the task that faced both of today's guests, Gordon Bethune, Chairman and CEO of Continental Airlines, and Micheal Bonsignore, Chairman and CEO of Honeywell International. Now, they're different personalities, as you'll see. They work in different industries, but their lives have significant intersections. Continental is one of Honeywell's largest customers. Gordon Bethune sits on Honeywell's board. They both spent years in the United States Navy. They know each other as customers and as peers, and, maybe most important, they both took over their companies at a time when they might have received not words of congratulations, but deepest sympathies in your time of need. And both companies have had to answer a question. Is bigger really better? Honeywell recently joined with Allied Signal to create a $26 billion giant. And now, Bonsignore has the task of combining both of these corporate cultures into one cohesive Goliath. He also must sell his vision to a recently more skeptical Wall Street. Now, I'll be speaking with Micheal Bonsignore later in the program. But first, Gordon Bethune. He's the chairman and CEO of Continental Airlines. Now, his first task was to convince the board to make him CEO. Okay. The second task was to find some way fast to take what might have been the worst airline in the country, an airline on the verge of terminal bankruptcy, and keep it alive. Within a year of taking control, Gordon Bethune turned Continental's $200 million loss into a $200 million profit, and he earned top rankings in customer satisfaction. Now, Bethune knows the airline business well because he learned it the old-fashioned way, from the bottom up.
Very nice to meet you, sir. Good flight. Okay, thanks for flying with us. You made him happy, didn't you?
Yeah.
You're doing a great job. Doing good, thanks.
베튠 회장은 사람들 속에서 차지해야 합니다.
You Continental member.
What's the name?
주지사 후보로 출마라도 한 듯 보이는군요.
You guys are doing great.
하지만 이분은 거대 항공사의 경영자죠. 주위에 TV 카메라가 있든 없든 휴스턴의 조지 부시 국제공항에 가면 콘티넨탈 항공사의 회장이자 CEO인 고든 베튼의 친숙한 모습을 볼 수 있습니다. 베튼 회장은 짐을 싣거나 장비를 확인하는 일까지 스스럼없이 합니다. 이것은 베튼 회장의 경영 철학에서 나오는 겁니다. 그의 철학은 직원들이 즐거워야 고객들에게 훌륭한 서비스를 할 수 있다는 거죠.
There are no successful companies that don't have good products. There are no successful companies that don't have people who like coming to work there.
콘티넨탈 항공은 베튼 회장의 공약을 실천하고 있습니다. 정시에 비행을 끝내고 돌아오는 매달 5만 명의 직원들에게 1등은 $100씩, 2, 3등에게는 $65를 줍니다. 또 최근에 벌이고 있는 직원 장려 프로그램으로는 개근상을 받게 된 직원들 중에서 해마다 2번씩 9명을 뽑아서 당첨자들에게 포드 익스플로러 밴을 나눠주는 행사도 있습니다.
There's a 100% correlation between employees' happiness and customer satisfaction. We can show you that.
And today I'm proud to say, thanks to all of you, that Continental is absolutely hitting on all cylinders at the very top of its game.
콘티넨탈 항공이 최고의 자리에 올랐다는 베튼 회장의 말을 뒷받침해줄 증거가 있습니다. 콘티넨탈 항공은 5년 동안 매 분기마다 수익 기록을 세웠죠. 그리고 4년 동안 장거리 비행 고객들이 최고의 고객 만족도를 나타낸 회사이기도 합니다.
This company has gone from worst to first in every satisfaction measure that employees use, that customers use, and financial investors use. And it's just based on doing a few things right. And I think it works in any business. I really believe that.
It's that simple. Make people happy and give the customers the basics. And just having a simple vision and sticking to it and making sure it's sold throughout the organization is probably his greatest strength.
이 회사가 90년대 초 최악의 노사 관계에 빠졌던 회사였던 게 믿어지십니까? 당시 콘티넨탈 항공은 가장 낮은 고객 만족도를 기록했습니다. 1994년 베튼 회장이 투입되고 얼마 후 콘티넨탈 항공은 세 번째 파산 위기를 맞이했습니다.
No one liked anyone. Nothing was going to work.
그러나 베튼 회장과 직원들 간의 현재 관계는 상호적입니다. 베튼이 들어온 지 겨우 1년 후 직원들이 회장에게 감사하는 마음으로 선사한 보너스는 새로 나온 할리 데이비슨 오토바이였습니다.
They surprised me with it. I was flattered and flabbergasted as well. It was just a beautiful bike.
기업의 부활을 이끌어낸 50대 후반의 베튼 회장에게는 뜻밖의 모습도 있습니다. 그는 아버지의 농약 살포기를 타고 놀았죠. 그러나 아버지가 조종사가 되라고 하자 거절하고 고등학교를 중퇴한 채 해군에 입대했습니다. 20년 동안 군인으로 복무한 베튼은 우수한 항공기 정비사가 되었습니다. 결국 그는 고등학교 졸업장과 대학 학위를 땄고 하버드 경영대학원에서 고위 경영 프로그램까지 참가했죠. 군대에서 퇴역한 베튼은 브레니프, 웨스턴, 피드몬트 항공에서 지점을 운영하는 것으로 항공 산업을 시작하게 됩니다. 웨스턴 시절 베튼은 조종사 자격을 땄고 그 후 보잉사의 고객 담당자로 일하면서 보잉 737기와 757기를 만드는 지부에 들어가게 되죠. 보잉에서 일하는 동안 베튼은 상업용 비행기를 조종하는 법을 배우게 되고 지금도 개인적으로 보잉사에서 사들인 콘티넨탈사의 새 비행기를 몰기도 합니다. 1994년 콘티넨탈 항공의 CEO로 채용된 베튼은 항공사의 사정이 자신이 상상했던 것보다 나쁘다는 걸 알게 됐습니다.
It's like a telephone. The phone looks good, you pick it up, it's got no dial tone.
그러나 몇 개월 후 자신을 CEO로 만들어준 이 사진들을 안심시키게 되는데 겨우 1년 만에 콘티넨탈이 가진 2억 불의 손실을 2억 불의 흑자로 돌려놓은 겁니다. 베튼 회장은 앞으로 5년간은 더 콘티넨탈 항공사에 남아있을 거라고 하는군요. 콘티넨탈 항공사를 안전하게 자리 잡게 한 베튼 회장은 앞으로도 자리를 지키며 직원들과 고객, 투자자들에게 더욱더 만족스러운 비행을 선사할 것입니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman and CEO of Continental Airlines, Gordon Bethune. Welcome. Have a seat and tuck in.
Cool.
Thank you. First of all, I have to ask you, Gordon, is your seat back in the full upright and locked position for this interview?
Yes, it is. We're clear for takeoff,
Good.
yeah.
Now, in the movie of your life, it would start with you and your dad flying in your dad's crop duster airplane. And we would see somehow foreshadowed your love of airplanes. Is this real life? Did you come back at childhood? Did you say, God, this is great. I've got to be involved with airplanes?
No, not at all. It's what I really want to do is get out of town, and I did. And I joined the Navy, and I didn't even know the Navy had airplanes. But the guy who was with me in the induction center said they did. And, of course, I'd worked with my dad's airplane, so I said, okay, that's what I wanted to do.
The other part of some of these movies is that there's early foreshadowing of great achievement, most likely to succeed in high school, let's say. I take it this was not part of your early resume.
I've got a quite checkered past. I quit school in the 11th grade to join the Navy. I subsequently went to high school at night in Key West, Florida, and graduated from Key West High School, and went on to college at night and graduated from college, but I didn't start off with any clear educational credentials.
Okay, so here you are a high school dropout, you join the Navy, and it's a Navy aptitude test, if I read your bio right, that says, you'd be good at fixing stuff.
Right, I scored high on a their equivalent of an IQ test, and they saw some promise in me. I didn't see it in myself, but they put me right back in school where I didn't want to be for another year and a half, and I was an electronics mechanic.
But this was a surprise to you? I mean,
well, it's not what my idea of having a good time was at the time.
No, I can understand that. Believe me, I'm a liberal arts major myself. But at what point did you realize not simply that you were good at this equipment, but that you knew how to lead people?
It was a fluke. There was a petty officer second class exam, and I was the only person that got promoted. And we didn't have enough petty officers, so I became in charge of the night shift in this electronic repair shop on the ship. And the next thing, instead of fighting the organization, I'm in charge of the second shift. We work from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And I had fun because I was working with my friends, but we were kind of challenged to get the airplanes ready for in the morning, and we did real well. And the next thing you know, they're bragging on you, saying you're a great supervisor, so they co-opted me. And I found out it's a whole lot easier working with these guys when they like you than when you're always fighting them from the other end.
Now, at the risk of jumping ahead a few decades, is that a key lesson that a CEO should know as well? That it's a lot easier motivating people when they think and they come to believe that you know them, you like them, you respect them?
I think, Jeff, too, it's also a part that you let them know that they're part of the organization. They're an integral, important part. So you've got to kind of openly appreciate them. And that's when they really shine.
I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would also think that in a world where sometimes the folks on the line regard the folks in the executive suite as just a wee bit elitist, that it isn't so bad to have somebody who they know spent 20 years in the Navy, flew some planes, and got his hands real dirty pulling stuff out of an engine. You
know, it's fun because someone said to me, says, Gordon, how come you know so much about people? I said, hell, I used to be one. I mean, what the...
I'm not sure that's the first time you've used that line, but it's a damn good line, Gordon.
It's also true, and the facts are that the men and women who are at the top of an organization weren't always there. And if they forgot that they weren't, well, that's bad, shame on them. But remembering how you got there is going to keep you there a lot longer if you just take the time to remember.
And here's this airline. I mean, Continental Airlines used to be the punchline of a joke, right?
That's right.
You know?
It's true.
You can either die or go to Newark and fly Continental Airlines. I mean, that's... And somebody says to you, Gordon, we had a great opportunity for you. We want you to come to an airline that it may be facing its third wave of bankruptcy, might well be insolvent, has the worst reputation of any airline possibly in America. The people who work for the airline literally have been ripping the insignias off so people won't know they work for Continental. How'd you like to run it?
Well, they asked me that for like 20 months, and I kept telling them no. At the end of the day, though, the guy who was running the company reminded me that I wasn't really running the Boeing company. While I was a big shot, I wasn't exactly in charge. He said, hell, if you come over here, because I was a pilot, and he knows that, he says, you could be my co-pilot and really help us steer this airplane and get this thing going. And the joke was, you know, he didn't tell me that both engines had quit.
So here you are, and let's just stipulate, as lawyers say, that you are the most charismatic, inspiring leader that ever walked the face of the earth. But still, how do you take a company with no morale, no cash reserves, where customers would sooner take a bus sometimes than fly you, and turn it around? I mean, what specific skills does it take to do that?
Well, first of all, you've got to recognize that to have a good airline, the men and women have to kind of want that. We let the men and women who actually fly the airplanes design the flight schedule. It's different times to fly to Boston in the winter than it is in summer. It's different at Friday night than it is on Sunday afternoon. And so we made a representation that you tell us what you can do, and then we'll represent to the public that we will do that better than other airlines. And if you do, I'll pay you extra. It was $65 a month. But it was a recognition of something extra for doing your job well and the job that you said you could do well. We quickly became the best on-time airline in America.
It wasn't the fact that it was $65 a month, but it was a way of saying, look, help us, and there'll be a little something extra for you.
Yeah, but we've spent, the past 10 years with lawyers figuring out how to screw them out of the money. Here's a guy going to give them extra money, which says there's something new under the sun here. This is not a new deal from the same old deck. We're actually a different management looking to solve problems and reward those who help us do it.
Could the right leader, do you think, accomplish this in almost any institution?
Absolutely. I mean, look, there's nothing new under the sun of what we did. We just included people who are important. You can't take these men and women, regardless of what their role is, and take them for granted. You have to appreciate them. When people know that you appreciate them, they work harder for you.
And before we switch gears, I promised my mother I would ask.
I don't know where her bag is.
Is it? No. Now, the question is, would you confirm or deny that all airline food is produced in an underground bunker in Kansas and sent by pipeline all over the country where it is produced as extruded food product?
I tell you what, there's a huge difference in food today, and we spent an amazing amount of time and effort on food and it shows huge dividends in customer satisfaction. It's very difficult to have a steak, tenderloin, kind of medium rare to your specifications at 40,000 feet in an oven. But the facts are that some of us are doing pretty good at food.
Now, here's a question that occurred to me this morning on the runway at LaGuardia Airport, where my 9:30 flight took off at 5 of 11, not a continental flight. And the question is, you can change the culture of your company, but if I have experienced what millions of Americans have experienced this summer, events that are beyond the control, I would assume, of any one airline company, there's really nothing you can do about that, is there?
Well, in a larger sense, there's a very big difference, and J.D. Power will tell you, between the best airlines, which he ranks us as the best, and the worst, and it's getting wider. So when you say airlines, you're talking generically, and they're very, very different animals. Number two, airlines are not allowed, like in LaGuardia, to coordinate schedules. They said, well, they overscheduled the airline. Well, we can't even talk to Delta or American. It's against the law for us. We schedule airplanes when people want to go. We actually schedule them to destinations they want to visit. I mean, we're kind of customer-driven, and what we have is millions and millions of Americans who want to go, and they don't want to go at 3 a.m., they want to go at 8, and they want to come home at 5, just like most commuters. And that taxes the roadways. It also taxes the airways and the airports.
The result being that they will not leave at 8 and they will not get there at 5.
But at the same time, technology can make the highways in the sky, the airways, and the airports much more productive than they are. And we need to implement that because we're not going to get more runways in New York. So we're going to have to figure out how to use the runways we have better.
Pretty much these days, when you go to the airport, you go with your heart in your mouth. Because you're afraid of what you're going to confront.
What you're going to confront is rush hour traffic, and rush hour is getting to be a broader definition.
When is not rush hour?
Well, I'm saying, so that's getting more and more where we like to schedule New York, Newark almost constantly all day. We don't de-peak it or have peak hours. 80% of our airplanes were full this summer. Men and women want to go. And so we're selling tickets. They're taking 10% of that ticket cost and paying it to the government as a tax to improve the air traffic control system. They need to get their money's worth, and they're not. But we don't tell the public what to do, and I don't think the government should tell the public not to travel. It's the government's job to figure out how do we accommodate access to our cities and towns across the United States. It's our job to listen to the public and what they want and give it to them at a fair value.
You know, maybe if they're looking for a new czar of the government airport air system, we may have one sitting right here.
Mike is going to be right out.
All right. Gordon, speaking of that, thank you. You'll be joining us later. Very much appreciate it. Gordon Bethune. Gordon Bethune of Continental will be back later in the show. And like Gordon Bethune, my next guest is also a Navy man. Micheal Bonsignore graduated from Annapolis, but he turned down a promotion to lieutenant commander and left the Navy to go to work for Honeywell. He's never left, rising to the CEO seat in 1993, retaining that spot once the recent merger with Allied Signal was completed. It's a union that's fresh enough to leave Micheal Bonsignore still charting its course.
이곳은 뉴욕 5번가처럼 보이지만 사실은 번화가와는 멀리 떨어져 있습니다. 이곳은 미니애폴리스의 필리스 지역으로 한유엘의 본사가 거의 100년 동안 자리 잡고 있던 곳입니다. 오래된 한유엘 건물의 그늘에서 뜨고 있는 포트랜드 플레이스는 두 블록을 차지하는 새로운 주택개발 단지로 한유엘 재단에서 투입한 $500만 시작됐죠.
How are you? Good. Mike Bonsignore. Hi, Steve. How are you?
이는 애완용 프로젝트로 한유엘의 CEO인 마이클 본시뇨르 회장이 그 진행 과정을 감독하기 위해 나와 있군요.
Wonderful. I say it's so gratifying to see it all come together.
1999년 얼라이드 시그널과 합병하면서 본시뇨르 회장은 뉴저지의 모리스타운에 있는 예전 얼라이드 본사로 옮겨왔습니다.
Great. I'd love to.
본시뇨르 회장은 이곳에 대한 좋은 기억들을 갖고 있습니다. 그는 한유엘에 30년을 머물렀고 1993년 한유엘의 CEO가 되었죠. 포트랜드 플레이스에서 만난 예전 한일의 직원은 본시녀르 회장을 친근한 분으로 기억하고 있었습니다.
You'll see him there eating lunch with employees where I'm sure he could send someone down and pick up his lunch even in his office.
포트랜드 플레이스의 주택에는 공기청정기나 자동온도 조절 장치, 방범 장치 같은 한일의 제품이 들어가 있습니다. 얼라이드 시그널과 합병을 한 후 한유엘은 다각적인 복합 기업체가 되었죠.
About 40% of the new company is aerospace, primarily commercial. Virtually everything on an airplane from the front of the airplane to the back.
한유엘의 또 다른 주요 산업 분야 중에는 예전에 얼라이드 화학회사의 전자제품이나 화학제, 냉동제로 합병 이후 취급하게 된 것들입니다. 현재 한유엘의 수익의 40%는 유지보수 계약과 같은 서비스에서 나옵니다. 본시녀르 회장은 세계 확장을 우선 과제로 꼽습니다. 그는 5곳의 외국에 머물면서 4개국어를 할 수 있죠.
He's a very good leader, okay, and he has excellent global strategic vision.
새로워진 한유엘은 첨단 기술에 치중하고 있습니다. 이런 회로파는 선 마이크로 시스템스의 워크스테이션에 들어갑니다. 얼라이드 시그널사의 조직이었던 이런 전자부품 공장은 휴대폰 판넬도 생산하죠.
Hello there, Micheal Bonsignore. Nice to meet you, sir.
본시녀르 회장의 첫 방문입니다. 생산 과정과 직원들을 직접 보기 위해 온 것이죠.
In an average week, I'll do this once, sometimes twice a week.
군의관의 아들로 태어난 본시녀르는 1960년대 해군 사관학교에 들어가게 됩니다. 그는 베트남전에 참전할 당시 돌격부대로 활동했습니다. 본시녀르는 스쿠버 다이빙과 낚시도 좋아합니다.
What we do is just take and drop just pieces of turkey in the tank. Look at these guys go at it.
그러나 합병 이후 본시녀르 회장은 바다보다는 사업에 푹 빠져 살고 있습니다.
Come and get it here. I'll eat out of your hand.
No, they're not that friendly yet.
요즘은 증권가에서의 대접도 따뜻하지만은 않습니다. 처음에는 하늘이 해준 합병이라고 일컬었지만 지금의 한유엘의 사정은 좋지 못합니다. 2000년 초가 되자 한유엘은 밝은 전망으로 주식시장을 안심시켰지만 겨우 몇 주 후 현금 흐름과 수익을 잃고 말았죠. 결국 한유엘은 이듬해 연간 성장률과 주당 순위 수준을 하향 조정했습니다. 증권 분석가들은 그 일로 충격을 받았죠.
He missed the mark, and he didn't even know he was missing it.
본시녀르 회장에게는 이런 일이 처음이 아닙니다. 1994년 예전 한유엘의 CEO 시절 이런 비슷한 위기를 맞았습니다. 그때도 수익은 부진했고 주가는 하락했죠.
We went from the depths of despair in 94 to about the time when we merged the two companies. The Honeywell stock price had almost quintupled in value, and we were doing great. To some degree, we're kind of at that starting point right now in the first year of a very difficult merger, a lot of moving parts. Our job now is to make sure that the fundamentals of this merged company come to the surface. And that's all gold-plated.
본시녀르 회장은 새롭게 성장하게 된 한유엘을 21세기 세계적인 기업의 전형으로 만들기 위해 애쓰고 있습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Honeywell International's Chairman and CEO, Micheal Bonsignore. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We talked about Gordon's experience in the Navy. Did you run away and join the Navy just so you could see the world like the old ads?
Well, it's funny. I had always wanted to go to the Naval Academy. Then that was my singular focus as a young child, as a teenager, and I was happy to get it done.
Which segues into my next question. You are, you're not the son of the owner of the company, which is one fast track to the executive suite. You didn't come out of a prestigious business school with an MBA, which may or may not be a fast track. We'll see in a while. So you join Honeywell, and at some point there comes a pivotal moment in your life at Honeywell, maybe early on, where somewhere the thought comes into your head, I could run this place someday. Did you have in the back of your mind that there was a goal to reach, and the goal was the very top of this pyramid?
Ultimately, yes. I would say, but well into my career. I had been with the company 18 years before I went to Minnesota for the first time, to the corporate headquarters. So I was really a product of the colonial part of Honeywell, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And as a result, not terribly steeped in the corporate culture. But coming to Minnesota and getting adapted to the corporate culture, I felt that I had what it took in terms of qualifications to go all the way.
Now, This next question requires perhaps excessive candor on your part. So, when you are doing this, when you go to headquarters, do you also look around and think, I think those are other folks who might be on this track. If I'm going to get this job someday, I'm going to have to be better than this person.
Sure, it's only natural. All companies tend to have horse races, whether they're formal or informal, and there are peers around you, hopefully, in a healthy company that would have more than one likely to succeed.
But what is it like working, and I assume that you had to at times work on projects with people who you also saw as a potential rival?
Well, I think you develop a working relationship with your peers that has its good moments and its bad moments. And I think part of this job and part of the qualifications for this job is being adaptable and being able to get on and do your job in spite of the fact that the circumstances around you might be challenging. And I would say in any corporation, in a succession mode, there is a certain level of what I call unnatural behavior that occurs, and you have to keep this in perspective as you're getting your job done.
Unnatural behavior as in?
Well, and everybody trying to make sure that whatever decision they make, whatever action they take it in the context of, is this going to be good for me and good for the company at the same time.
But there was a succession battle. There were, I guess, 3 of you, and it was a very protracted one.
Yes,
right?
too long.
About 20 months?
Yes.
Okay, how do you retain sanity, amiability, productivity when everybody knows that you or one of these 2 other guys is going to be the next CEO?
Yeah.
And that's got, talk about unnatural circumstances, that's got to be, well, weird.
Well, we all had big jobs to do, number one. We had obligations to our customers. We had obligations to our employees. And so, I mean, you have to, first of all, you have to go out and get your job done every day and do it in an environment that may be somewhat unnatural.
So you get the job. You are now you are CEO. And you look at this company in which you have now spent more than 30 years of your life, and the news isn't really all that wonderful, is it?
I recognize 2 things. Number one, the company had been around for 108 years. Number 2, it had begun to take its success for granted. And number 3, it needed a good, swift kick in the seat of the pants.
How, as a leader, do you communicate that concretely?
Well, we established some very clear messages right from the beginning. A very simple vision for the company: delighted customers, profitable growth, and leadership and control. And we set some stretch goals for ourselves, and as Gordon said, we compensated people on the ability to make those goals. And
that succeeded to the point where you, like Gordon Bethune, were both included in a book called Comeback, about how CEOs turn the company around. So let me just bring us a little up to date and talk about some of the newer challenges. One of them is you were, for a long time, absolutely the darling of Wall Street. They loved you. This summer, you had a bump. There was what looks to me like a small shortfall in earnings,
yes.
But because of a miscommunication
yes.
or something, the Wall Street analysts really
yes.
They were not happy, were they?
Not at all.
Now, I mean, they were really unhappy.
They were very unhappy.
Really unhappy. And they have a way of showing that.
Yes,
right?
they do.
Yeah. So here you are. You've come from an experience where you've turned a company around. Now you look at this fairly significant part of what you do, and what do you have to do now? What have you been doing to say to Wall Street, okay, look, take a fresh look at us. What happened last summer with those earnings forecasts and our lack of communication with you? First of all, do you have to acknowledge to them that something went wrong?
Oh, absolutely. I think not to acknowledge something like that would be foolish. And what I did on July 10th, one of my favorite days in my life, was to go before all these people and explain to them why our expectations for the year 2000 in retrospect were overly ambitious. I think we were caught up in the merger mania and all the euphoria associated with bringing these 2 companies together, and frankly, we underestimated the task of getting the integration done in the first year and in the effect of all of that on the earnings. So to grow 14% as opposed to 17%, we were severely punished for that.
But were you punished for the growth or for the, I mean, this is what I'm getting at. You know, the press always says to politicians, it's not the mistake, it's what you do about the mistake.
Yeah.
Was it that the forecast was a little short, or that they couldn't get an answer from you about what was going on for a couple of days?
Both. And the tough call, but calls that CEOs have to make all the time. When we began to see our second quarter deteriorating rather dramatically from our expectations, I was in a mode for a while where I wasn't totally sure what the situation was. And to go out and add insult to injury by saying we're going to miss the earnings and, oh, by the way, here are the reasons, We took 3 weeks to put the reasons together to the point where I had the confidence to say, and you can take this to the bank. And that was a very difficult call, and then at the end of the day, it was the right call, but it was a very painful. I paid a lot of personal and political capital for that.
On a different note, back some years ago during the Tylenol scare, when the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, Mr. Burke, kind of rewrote the rule book, and he had to come out and deal with really tough news that could have destroyed his company, and just stood up and said to his workers, everybody else, we're going to be open about this. When Honeywell runs into a difficult situation,
we're in one right now
with the school bus,
the recall of the Bendix ABS system.
Right. Well, that's the one, frankly, that I was thinking about. My first question is, let's put the public aside for a minute. What do you have to say? How do you, as the CEO, deal with the workers? I mean, they must be feeling terrible about all this. They must be feeling worried about the company and worried about all kinds of things. What do you do?
Terrible, but I think for all of us, the public safety is really the first issue here. And Bendix is another wonderful, venerable brand that's been around for decades and decades, a brand known for its quality. Here we have a situation where we have an electronic control unit in these brakes that sometimes interprets information from the wheels which is momentarily interrupted. And so we have made a decision. We're going to go out and recall all 300,000 of these brakes. Now the number of incidents has been very small, but nevertheless, even one incident is too many in my opinion.
But that's like the philosophy about what happened with the earnings. You just have to level, and you have to.
Absolutely.
Lastly, before we bring Gordon back, you once said that 10 years for a CEO is really stretching it. That's about it, and that sooner or later, we all have to recognize sooner or later that we've become dinosaurs. And you said you hope that the person who will recognize it first when it comes your turn is you.
It's me.
You see any signs of Jurassic Park around there?
Well, it kind of depends on the day of the week, I must say, but I never cease to be amazed by the speed with which everything is moving. And I go out and talk to some of our electronic engineers, some of our programmers today, and they're speaking a language I don't even understand. And I have an electrical engineering degree and have spent all my entire life in computers and control. So maybe there are a few little images of this Jurassic Park out there on the horizon.
But not just yet. Okay. Well, this is a good time to bring back Gordon Bethune and have a conversation between the two of you. So, Gordon, if you'll rejoin us. So here's the first thing that occurs to me. You're one of his biggest customers, right? They sell you a lot of stuff. And you're on his board of directors.
That's true.
So how nice do you have to be to him?
Very nice. Twice.
Twice what I mean. But you're also buddies, yes? You've known each other a long time?
No, I would say not a long time.
No, but we think alike on a lot of issues. And, Mike's running a really fine organization, which I was impressed with. So as a customer, and when he asked me to be on the board, I was delighted because they do so many things at Honeywell that I'm interested in, especially in avionics.
So let me put you on the spot a bit. You've both been described as spectacular salesmen. Gordon, what makes Mr. Bonsignore a spectacular salesman from what you've seen?
Well, Mike has got the ability to exude confidence in the knowledge of what he's talking about, and he has a good appreciation for the central issues that drive the business. And he has a sense of organizational skills that he can get his hands around a $26 billion conglomerate that's being merged with two disparate cultures. So he exudes the confidence of his abilities, and that's why people vote for him.
Okay.
Well, I think one of Gordon's key strengths is his candor. And one of the things I think I've enjoyed having Gordon as a colleague and as a board member is that whatever I hear from Gordon, I know is going to be the unvarnished truth about how he feels, about his opinion about whether we're doing things right or wrong, and that's extremely valuable. That's what directors are for.
I want to talk for a while now about what I guess we could call, for want of a better theme, and that is making the right merger. So let me just ask you the basic question. Is the general notion that we are in for an inevitable consolidation of airlines your sense of how the future is?
If you take the long-range view, Jeff, I'd say, how many airlines should there be in the United States? Like there's 10 majors today. Well, that's probably not the right answer. Should there be one? I think, yeah, if it's Continental, that's a good answer. But the answer then is somewhere between 1 and 10. And right now, I don't think there's any palate for mergers in our country.
Well, let me be more blunt. Northwest has, I guess, a controlling interest in your company in terms of the stock, yes?
In a trust that they
in
cannot vote, right. So, but we have a larger marketing agreement which both of us benefit from tremendously economically.
Well, do you want to stay in that trust?
Absolutely. They're really tremendous partners.
Okay. What happens if Delta makes a run at Northwest, which means they would then effectively have controlling interest over you?
Well, I just tell Delta good luck. Because that
would you really put it that way?
No, I'm saying that first of all, that bite of assimilating Northwest and ourselves is not something that could ever happen. One of the two would have to spin off, and it would be us. I think we're poised long term to be independent.
Now, in your case, I think it was the New York Times that described your merger with Allied Signal as a merger made in heaven. Do you feel like you are bouncing through the Elysian fields right now? Or are there somewhat more earthbound? I mean, has it been a corporate culture dilemma that you are now coming to grips with in this merger?
I wouldn't call it a dilemma. I would call it a challenge. We started out right on day one by saying the new Honeywell will not be a derivative of the old Honeywell or the old Allied Signal. And we will compensate and reward employees who look for the best practices from both to create a new culture, and we will punish those who don't.
One of the things that we do on these shows is that we have professors at the school we are at pose questions. The first question comes from Alan Lind, and he's a professor of business administration. And it's a question for both of you.
You've both talked about leadership, and I'd like to ask you how you go about inspiring trust and loyalty among your workers.
So let me just tack on to this question. Is the key rewarding them or making them feel that they are part of a team and that they're listened to? What's more, are either of them more important?
Well, I would say they all go together. First of all, communication, absolutely candid, straight up, unvarnished truth about the company's situation and what the company is doing. This is not something which is going on in the back room without them involved. That's why the town meetings, that's why the lunches, that's why all of the communication tools we have in place to keep them involved. Employees are extraordinarily resilient people, and they are willing happily to deal with hardship as long as they know that there's some light at the end of the tunnel and that management is being straight with them. And it's all.
No question about it. You ever watch a football game before the play, there's a huddle, right? Who's in the huddle? Not just the big shots in the backfield. Everybody on the team's got to know what we're going to do. That communications of what adversity we face. We've had some very difficult decisions early in my career at Continental, but we sat down with employee groups and sought common answers. They understood the problem we're solving for, bought into it. Sometimes the solution wasn't personally good for them, but they knew that we were working in a direction to make it ultimately good for everyone.
I want to broaden this out because, one of the things that I enjoy when I talk to CEOs is it is a culture that I do not swim in, which is a lucky thing for me and my children because I would be on food stamps. But it gives me a chance to rid myself perhaps of some stereotypical thinking. And one of them is I sometimes think that some people want to merge because they think in the most basic economic sense, size matters. That if they can run a $30 billion company, it's cooler than running a $10 billion company. And the reason I raise this is that there's an article that just came out in the Harvard Business Review that says that there really is very little evidence that this relentless expansion is actually making companies work better. And they ascribe a lot of these mergers to what they call herd behavior on the part of CEOs. Buy any of that?
I think it's more testosterone than anything else.
Aha. So size matters.
Well, I mean, that's the behavior. That manifests itself in that, how long is your runway or how big is your airplane, all that kind of stuff. Who cares? There's a very successful company, Southwest, who doesn't fly big airplanes at all and doesn't go internationally, but they've been successful for 25 years. So it's clearly not the case, but you can get into that testosterone thinking and destroy your company.
Well, you actually have confirmed a deeply rooted suspicion that at times that people seek a merger because it's a bigger company. Therefore, I am more important. Well, you sometimes look at a merger and go, it just doesn't make any sense.
The statistics of the merger business would suggest that it's a slippery slope under the best of circumstances. Uh-huh. And so I guess I'm not sure that someone trying to be more important and more successful is going to opt for something which, by its very statistics, would suggest that it's a sporty course.
In this area, the question comes from Michael Bradley, who was F.M. Kirby Professor of Finance. And this question is for Mr. Bethune, but please feel free to join in.
The stock market typically responds favorably to the announcement of a merger in the airline industry. Do you think this is a result of the market expecting higher airfares or lower operating costs in the future?
I think they look for the lower operating costs. There are some synergies in the marketplace through mergers, and that's where the MBAs and the models come into effect, where you can put two and two together and make 5. The problem is getting these 100,000 people and these 50,000 people to kind of want to do it, and that's not in the model. And so it usually ends up 2 and 2 make 3.
But in this particular question, do you think that Wall Street is saying we think that the direction of the airline industry is that people are going to be willing and have to pay more for their ticket prices
we're in an elasticity business. I said we ran an 80% load factor almost as an industry this summer. That's very high. That's a lot of demand. Clearly, you could raise prices, get as much money, and have less customers, and have a whole lot less work. That's the way the market works. And so I think the pricing is fair today. There's a huge competition amongst the 10 airlines. Any one of them will get you across the United States over some other city.
You know, I was actually going to ask you to explain the pricing system of airline tickets, and I realized it's only an hour show.
That's right.
So there's no point. The last thing we're going to touch on today is serving the customer. If everybody understands that you have to serve the customer, how come customer dissatisfaction in so many different areas of this economy is, I would suggest, enormously high? I mean, is it a decline of service? What's going on here?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure it's a foregone conclusion that people get it, that serving the customer is the right thing to do. I think what we have done is we have depersonalized our businesses so dramatically with all these electronic aids now, getting you on the telephone and putting you through this prompting process. You want to talk to a human being, explain what your needs are, and have somebody respond. And when I see in my own experience some of the things I have to do with other industries of making my desires known as a customer, let me tell you, it sharpens my awareness for going back and making sure that this kind of thing is not going on in our company.
That's very encouraging. You should touch on this for a minute. Do both of you sometimes take personal experiences in the marketplace and go back to your workers and say, here's what happened to me, let's make damn sure that doesn't happen to our customers?
I think we're all a product of that. One of the things that we do in our company is we talk about, don't ask what customers want, because you'll get an epistle. Ask rather what they want and will pay for. And you'll probably get a very short list and you could put on one page. And then you ought to work on that every day. Okay? So you've got to meet expectations. I think in a lot of areas, expectations are unreasonably set, what you should get for your $99. At the same time, we need to focus on, if that's all they will pay is $99, let's make sure that's what they get, and they get fair value for that.
This question comes from Professor William Bolding. He's a professor of marketing. And the question, he says, is for both of you.
You've both led your companies during both good times and bad times. Given the differences in availability of resources and the motivating pressures of those different times, my question is, when do you feel your company's made more progress in delivering value to the customer?
I think we're continually making progress in delivering value. I don't think that's something that starts and stops. I mean, we began to add value where value was needed, clearly, in a failing company. And the things that customers ask for and will pay for, they should get consistently and reliably. So we started putting that as our measure of success. We continue to do that today. You can never stop.
Can you answer that question, a different spin on it?
I think we have spent a lot of time and energy getting direct customer feedback, statistical, quantitative customer feedback, so that we're not sitting in our little ivory tower saying, oh, the customer is satisfied or not satisfied. I think this linkage with the customer and the direct feedback on how we're doing is vital.
Okay, thanks. In a moment, we're going to take some questions from our audience of future MBAs, but first some background on Duke University's Fuqua School of Business.
미국의 최우수 경영대학원 중 가장 역사가 짧은 퓨쿠아 경영대학원은 1972년 12명의 학생들로 시작됐습니다. 그러나 현재는 700명에 가까운 학생들이 다니고 있죠. 그중 25%는 외국 유학생들입니다. 사학과인 JB 퓨쿠아 이름을 딴 이 학교는 현재 비즈니스 위크지가 뽑은 경영대학원 중 7위를 차지하고 있습니다.
It's time now for the next generation of business leaders to ask their questions of our guests. When you do, please state your name before your question. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Vic Devasetti. Based on your own personal experiences in your careers, what do you feel are the most important personal characteristics that have helped you reach the status where you are right now? Is it your ability to schmooze and network, or possibly your ability to get everyone to like you, or even to be cutthroat, to, I guess, push yourself up while others might not necessarily get to that point?
That's a much blunter way of asking the question than I did. What do you think, Michael? Thank you.
Well, I would respond by saying, first of all, one has to have a sense of future state, a sense of vision. Where am I going to stay on that course, to do what I have to do to get there? Second point is to be adaptable. I think today more and more CEOs are simply not credible if they can't relate to the employees that work for the company that they're supposed to be running. So communication skills, interpersonal skills, some sense of personal credibility. If I have no credibility in my own organization, I'm worthless. I mean, it basically comes down to that, in my opinion.
Gordon, what about I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's all true. I think you'd have to ask you what's the most important ingredient in a successful cake. I mean, you take anything out and it changes. So there's no one most important thing that makes us what we are or what you are. All the things that Mike talked about are important ingredients of being a leader, but they certainly aren't the only things.
There was one mention, though, that I want to ask you about. Do you need at some level, sometime, a certain sense of ruthlessness? That is, do you have to make decisions that you know are going to hurt people in order to be a successful CEO?
Well, it's part of the job. I mean, to take 11,000 people out of our company during this merger was a very difficult decision. To relocate our headquarters from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Morristown, New Jersey after more than a century was a very difficult decision, but decisions that have to be made in the interest of the company going forward.
I'm not sure ruthlessness is the word. I mean, if a surgeon takes out a malignant tumor, it's with some pain, but certainly for the good of the patient. So I think all of us have to have some objectivity about what we're doing, and if we let our personal feelings govern our lives, then we maybe slip into the abyss. So you have to do what you need to do.
Right. Okay.
Good evening, Rick Aguilar. Jeff, I actually have two questions. The first one for Mr. Bonsignore. Could you differentiate leadership from management? And the second one, Mr. Bethune, could you describe your differences in leadership in managing when you first came into Continental, managing under that crisis? What was your leadership style under that crisis?
Thank you. Leadership versus management.
Well, I've differentiated those two words by thinking of leadership as doing the right things and management as doing things right. And believe me, there's a big difference in an organization for leaders who do the right things and managers who do things right. I think you have to have a nice blend of both.
And when you came on and now?
Well, when you're as a pilot, you're at 1,000 feet and you're in a spin and you're upside down, you need to kind of think about two things, and that's getting the wings level and getting the airspeed back. You still need to concentrate on where we're going and how we're going to get there, but there are more important things to do. And so in those trying times, we were like getting the wings level, getting the airspeed back, still having the thought about the direction we wanted the company to go. Subsequently, we're heading in the direction. We've got the altitude and airspeed that we need, and certainly the directional stability. So it does change, but the fundamentals are the same.
Okay. Your name and your question.
Hello, Barbara Rossmiller. I've heard you all both focus a lot of the intangibles, the trust in your organizations, the communication, motivation. How do you still have to run a company. How do you balance and prioritize those two things?
Well, I think it's very important that the organization know what is expected of it quantitatively. So we put very specific plans together, financial plans, growth plans, return on capital plans, investment plans, prioritization plans, so that employees have a very clear and specific roadmap of how we get from point A to point B over an increment of time. It's those intangibles, in my view, that tend to fill in the spaces, so to speak, to give the organization a sense of personality, a sense of culture, a sense of enthusiasm, a sense of direction, a sense of commitment. And that blend of quantitative and qualitative must be there if the organization is to prosper over the long haul.
We've used the same business plan for 6 years. It has a market strategy, a financial strategy, a product strategy, and a people strategy. And we articulate all of our annual goals in those four categories in the same way. It's like a litany. And so it's a very consistent directional heading that we take with specific go-dos for each particular year by department, by function. And so it's easily understandable. Everybody kind of knows where we're going. They kind of know how we're going to get there, and they know what their measures and their contribution has to be. That's just part of running the business every day. And I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind what we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to do 2,300 flights on time safely.
I have Truman Siemens. When you all look at the new generation of companies coming out and the new generation of business leaders, who do you all identify as really outstanding individuals, and what is it that makes what they're doing so important?
Well, let me go. In technology, it's changing our business in the distribution side of our business. Okay, we still can't beam somebody to someplace, so we're pretty good about getting you to Atlanta or to Boston.
I guess from a personality point of view, I tend to look at some of the extraordinary challenges that a guy like John Chambers at Cisco has, or Michael Dell has in his business, or bringing a website like Healthy On MD together, with the idea being of aggregating all of this medical resource for people to tap into all around the world and making that an economic model at the end of the day. I mean, these are some of the challenges that are going on today in that new economy world, which are quite fascinating. They're growing very quickly. Technology changes almost overnight. The strategic decisions you make today, you may never have a chance to see them played out before they're displaced by something else. That's a fascinating world to be in.
Name and question.
Jennifer Schilling. Mr. Bonsignore, Honeywell invests in fuel cells and other technologies that may not necessarily have a near-term profit. What specific things do you do to support a culture that encourages thinking in long-term technologies and balancing that with near-term shareholder needs for returns on investment?
Well, it's an excellent question. And in a company like ours, which is rich in technology, there are a lot of great ideas like these distributed power devices you were talking about, microturbine generators, that have a wonderful future. We have a source of internal corporate venture capital that we put in place. A business plan is developed. These business plans can be on a 3-year cycle, a 5-year cycle, a 10-year cycle, and we try and mix the short-term return on our investments with some of these long-term opportunities like distributed power and fuel cells that will become a source of revenue for us quite a distance out in the future. So we think we have a very healthy culture in the company for supporting those kinds of opportunities.
Quentin, is there any opportunity in your business to pursue that kind of goal? I'm not even sure what it would mean. Are you looking at airplanes that'll fly 800 people at a time or something?
We're not the designers of airplanes, although we define the market for the airplane builders and tell them what we can economically use. So yes, we shape the future, but the facts are that technology leaps in airplanes, and my old Boeing days are pretty difficult to achieve given the environmental constraints and the huge non-recurring cost with a very low kind of return on investment.
Good evening. I'm Erin McCormick, and I was wondering if you would be so kind, both of you gentlemen, to share with us an occasion when you did make a major mistake or you did have a failure along the road of your business career.
Here's my first wife that comes to mind. Go ahead, Mike.
How can you top that one? Well, I think that, just to go back again to what we've just been through, I think the expectations that we put out in the public domain for the merger of Honeywell and Allied Signal were overly ambitious. We had to eat a lot of humble crow to recover from that, and we've done that. You make a mistake, you pick yourself up, and you get on with life. That doesn't mean that anything fundamental to do with this proposition is any less important or any less valuable than it was before we tripped over our shoelaces here.
I would think the real issue is not to admit and identify and act on your mistakes. So, that's why there's so many U-turns are legal and there's so many divorce courts. People make mistakes all the time, and you ought to step up to it and do something. You're going the wrong way. Say, hey, we screwed up. Let's go back. And I don't know anyone that doesn't make them. I make them all the time. I've got people help me kind of sort them out and kind of prevent me from doing some of the things I want to do. But identifying them and acting on them quickly And not trying to live with them and cover them up is a bigger mistake than any you could ever make.
Okay. I don't think we can top the answers to that last question, so it's a good place to stop. I want to thank everyone here at Duke's Fuqua School of Business and our CEOs for joining us, Gordon Bethune of Continental Airlines and Micheal Bonsignore of Honeywell International. If this meeting of the minds has helped contribute to the world's marketplace of ideas, that's the business of CEO Exchange. I'm Jeff Greenfield. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
Not a way to fly through a storm with a structural integrity of airplane. It ain't going to happen real soon, probably not in your lifetime. You're going to have to wait the storm out.
We looked at the global economy and we said, how can we serve global customers better?
So if I know what it is that you think is successful, I could probably tell you how to fix those. But I don't know what it is.
With that technology, we can expand the market dramatically.
If you're an employee at Continental, we're going to treat you the same way every day, not one day because we went to an HR conference.
Clearly, the future is being able to integrate all this capability around the world and do it better than the competitors.
And you do those better than all these other guys, you'll get this guy.
I think it's being in the right place at the right time.
This guy said, we fly 4 million people a month. We got to screw somebody up. I guess it was your turn.